Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. President Donald Trump has said that he expects to meet Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado. Meanwhile, interim leader Delcy Rodriguez has rejected Trump's claims of U.S. control, insisting Venezuela remains sovereign. According to Ukrainian officials, Russian drone strikes has hit Kyiv just before midnight of Friday, killing 4 people, including an emergency medic, and injuring at least 19 people, with 14 hospitalized. Military administration head reports buildings and critical infrastructure were damaged as well. U.S. Assistant Secretary for East Asia Michael Desombri has said that the United States will provide $45 million in assistance to Cambodia and Thailand to support implementation of the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords as part of the President Donald Trump's peace brokering efforts. This comes after recent border clashes that killed at least 101 people. According to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, India's trade deal with the United States stalled after Prime Minister Narendra Modi did not make a call to President Donald Trump to seal the agreement, leading to Washington doubling tariffs on Indian goods to 50%, including a 25% penalty over India's Russian oil purchases. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance urged Europe to take Donald Trump seriously on Greenland after Washington floated buying the Danish territory and did not rule out military action to secure it. Israel strikes has killed at least 13 Palestinians across the Gaza Strip on Thursday after the Israeli military said it targeted a site following a failed rocket launch, with medics reporting that 4 people, including children, were killed in a tent strike in Khan Yunis, while Hamas claims more than 1,100 Israeli ceasefire violations since October. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung will visit Japan on Tuesday to meet Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi in Nara. The summit will include discussions and a dinner on regional and global issues. U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he held a great meeting with Intel CEO Lip Bu-tan, calling him very successful and praising the U.S. government's 10% stake in the chipmaker. Intel shares has jumped in extended trading, up about 75% since the CHIPS Act investment. Now we have a breaking news. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has warned that the Islamic Republic will not tolerate mercenaries working on behalf of foreign powers. Khamenei has noted that some rioters are attempting to please U.S. President Donald Trump by damaging public property and urged all Iranians to preserve national unity in the face of unrest. Khamenei has also addressed Trump directly, telling him to focus on the problems within his own country instead of interfering in Iran's internal affairs. Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Sol Satka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Satka, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Now looking at this, why is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei so confidently framing unrest as the internal, of course, Iranian unrest as foreign-backed influence, and also whatever he has said towards U.S. President, that mind your own business kind of dialogue. How do you think U.S. will react, or do you think U.S. can completely ignore this?
Iran has no levers that it can pull against the USA. Iran spent 45 years building up proxy network to attack the West and cause the West problems. And that has unraveled over the past 2 years since one of its proxies, Hamas in Gaza, started a war that it then lost. And the entire thing gradually unraveled as Israel went through the process of picking it apart slowly, methodically, one by one, until this octopus of terror has been left without any of its legs. And so you have the head of the octopus sitting there with its bleeding tentacles in every direction, wailing at Trump. But Trump is in control of the largest military the world has ever seen. It has allies in the region, from Israel to the UAE to India, all of whom hate Iran. And Iran has no backers left. Russia, as we saw in June, was totally unable to come to Iran's aid. China is also unable to fundamentally help them, and certainly doesn't like getting involved in foreign conflicts. So Iran, the Iranian regime, is all alone. And the people that are rising up against the Iranians are not, as they pretend, Mossad agent or the CIA. Is in fact their own people. Because they were so intent on causing chaos around the region to bring about their crazed dreams of world domination for their sect, not only have they poisoned their own people against their own religion, but they have failed to maintain basic sanitation, basic water. Iran was an advanced country when they took it over. It had a strong currency, it had universities, it was a serious place. And what's left after 47 years of misrule is corruption and chaos. They don't have any water to drink, nothing works, they don't have any power. The people go out into the streets to buy their daily groceries, and every day the money in their pocket is worth 10% less every single day. So the people are rising up. And unlike in previous rounds of protests that we've seen over the past 20 years, this isn't really a protest about religious strictures. So the Iranians can no longer say, oh, we're going to let you wear slightly less head covering, or we're going to let women do such and such as the demands come across. This time, it's simply the people don't have any food. And at the same time as the people don't have what to eat, the Iranian regime doesn't have what to offer them. They want nothing to offer. They tried a desperate plea to offer Iranian citizens who do not protest $7 a month. $7, which is, by the way, worth over 10 million Iranian riyals, and 10% less every day. That's really all they got left, to try and buy off the people, not to protest, not to rise up against them. Whether this round of protests worked is unclear. The Trump administration is playing a very clever game, which is what Khomeini is reacting to there. The Trump administration has recognized that the people are very likely to overthrow the regime. And the only way the regime can protect itself, as it has done in the past, is by shooting protesters en masse to scare the other ones away. And so the Trump regime has provided a dilemma to the regime. If they shoot the protesters, Trump has promised to intervene. If they don't shoot the protesters eventually will simply overrun all the headquarters of the regime. So they don't know what to do. They're in a quandary.
Thank you for highlighting that and joining us, Mr. Solsatka. Now we move on to Russia and Ukraine. Now, Russian drones have attacked targets in Kyiv, killing 4 people, injuring at least 19, and inflicting considerable damage on dwellings and infrastructure. Russia's defense ministry says that its forces struck strategic targets in a massive overnight strike over Ukraine using Oreshnik, hypersonic, and several other missiles. Kyiv has claimed that Russia launched 36 missiles, 242 drones. Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha has confirmed that Kyiv is briefing the United States and European partners on the technical details of the strike involving the Oreshnik hypersonic intermediate-range ballistic missile. It has also stated that the strike took place close to EU borders and characterized the strike as a grave threat to European security and a test for the transatlantic community. Now we welcome Professor Veselin Popowski. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from Bulgaria. Thank you very much, Professor Popowski, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, Russian drones have, and the Russia-Ukraine war has continued and even escalated now that we are seeing Russia has used their hypersonic missile towards Ukraine. So do you think that this situation is escalating further? Do you think U.S. is still determined or motivated to intervene and push them towards ceasefire?
Hopefully so. Yes, you are right that there is escalation in the last 24 hours, especially with the hypersonic Oreshnik missiles. They produce mostly electricity cuts, not so much casualties, but a lot of people, over 1 million people, in fact, were left without electricity and heating for several hours. So effectively, Russia is trying to inflict as much damage and suffering for the Ukrainian people, but they are not able to do anything else. We see this like a last desperate attempts by Putin to inflict damage, but that with all those missiles and drones and attacks, the damage is quite limited. That means that Ukraine has already a significant air defense system, and it will be more so that the big cities, but also any cities, will be protected quite well. So to minimize the damage, including casualties, this is basically what we hear from Zelensky, from his European partners, is that all the support that Ukraine needs should be given immediately, as soon as possible. As far as the United States administration, yes, we know the horrible position by Donald Trump on this. He didn't do anything over the last year. He's just talking and not producing anything. He gave some ultimatums to Russia for ceasefire. He never followed up with any pressure on Vladimir Putin to accept those ceasefires. So the role of the United States and Donald Trump by himself has been reduced to a very minimum. He's not a player anymore in this, I think, unless there is a change in the attitude in Washington, in the White House. Is such change coming? Hopefully so. Everybody's hoping, Ukrainians is hoping that the US will finally support Ukraine properly and will put pressure on Russia severely so that this conflict can finally end. But again, the signals are very mixed as everything else. Donald Trump is erratic and chaotic. He says one thing one day, he says the other thing the other day. So the hopes are not very high that Washington will be a constructive player here.
Yes, thank you for highlighting that. And Professor, please stay with us as we stay on this news. Now, Ukraine has dismissed Russia's latest attempt to justify the military strike, calling the allegation that Ukrainian forces attacked President Vladimir Putin's residence as absurd. Kyiv says the repeated claims are false and designed to provide Moscow with a pretext for ongoing aggression. Ukrainian officials insist that no such attack took place and warn that Russia is using fabricated accusations to justify their further military actions. The statement comes amid heightened tensions in the region, with Ukraine continuing to face attacks along its borders. Now, for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Veselin Popovsky, the professor and vice dean at Tyndall Global Law School, joins us live from Bulgaria. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. As now, you were just highlighting that U.S. says one thing, so one day one thing, another. One thing is clear here. I just wanted to bring our focus into the fact that the U.S.-Russia nuclear arms control treaty that's expiring soon. Do you think that expiring soon will change anything in U.S. enforcing this, or U.S. backing Ukraine further, or do you think this will escalate the nuclear arms race or nuclear arms control treaty expiring will further deteriorate the situation?
Well, it's a good question, and if you ask this question to the White House, they will not know anything about this. They are so incompetent that they don't know what expires when. So that's why it's difficult to answer. Because if you ask me what Donald Trump thinks, I think he doesn't know what does he thinks. So for that matter, it's very, very difficult to comment on that. But yes, the treaty expires. So how Russia will play with that? Possibly aggressively. They will again ask the White House for some concessions, for some understanding of their position, in exchange for prolonging the nuclear treaty. Maybe that will be the approach from Moscow. They will try to make more phone calls between Putin and Trump. They will try to explain their position, which is always a manipulation. It is always a lie. Like, as you said, the attack on the Putin residence was a fantasy, an imagination they use for their excuses again and again to bomb civilian targets. So Russia will continue to manipulate, and the incompetent US administration will continue to be a dog on the leash or a puppet of this manipulation. So that's it's not serious both sides, you know. It's not serious on the Russian side because they are lying and manipulating. And obviously, Donald Trump is led by those manipulations, and he doesn't deliver what a normal president of the strongest military state in the world should do. So this kind of game, unfortunately, we will see for some time until there is some change, either in Moscow or in Washington, and hope such change will come one day. But yes, you're absolutely right. There is not much hope, and the expiry of a treaty will not change much, let's put it simply like this.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for joining us today and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now, we move the focus on to U.S. Hundreds of protesters took to the streets outside a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Portland, Oregon, following a shooting involving a federal agent that left 2 people injured. A U.S. Border Patrol agent shot and wounded a man and a woman in Portland, leading city and state officials to call for calm. This came after public outrage over the ICE shooting and death of the Minnesota woman a day earlier. Tensions over U.S. President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown rose across the country after the second shooting involving immigration officers in 2 days. The shootings deepened rifts between state and federal officials over how and why the shooting occurred. In both the Minneapolis and Portland shootings, U.S. officials contend that they were part of an increasing trend of criminal suspects and anti-Trump activists using their cars as weapons. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Sol Sadka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Sol, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what do you think what exactly is happening as we see similar kind of incidents with federal law enforcement agencies versus state, and also we see that the shootings happening from ICE or from ICE agents has been like a reoccurring thing.
The level of gun violence in the USA is quite extreme. If I recall, there's over 20,000 gun-related deaths every year. Many of them, I forget a small percentage, but still many, involving police and law enforcement, as would be expected. Because wherever you have crime and you have armed police, you're going to have reactions and ultimately deaths. But whether this is this one case, of which there are multiple every day, has caught public attention, is unclear why this particular one has caught public attention. But obviously there are many of these cases every week and even every day. So it's neither unusual nor surprising that this kind of thing will happen. The details of the case are hazy. Many people are defending the officer, other people are attacking him. No doubt it will all be investigated, and if he is guilty, he will serve time in jail.
How do you think, how might this shooting affect the political or debate over federal and immigration enforcement in Democrat-led states?
It's unknowable exactly what difference it will make. The ultimate responsibility for immigration into the United States is at the federal level. The state level can make certain accommodations for immigrants to the United States. They can make cities sanctuary cities where they try to prevent the enforcement of federal laws. That probably won't work well under the Trump administration because the federal government can retaliate with funding cuts and all sorts of penalties that will make the lives of the mayors and state governors difficult.
And what do these growing tensions between state and federal officials reveal about the challenges faced by Trump's administration of enforcing immigration policy?
The immigration policy, to enforce immigration policy on the federal level, is quite straightforward, seeing as the United States has easily defendable and quite well defended borders. Although over the past couple of years, the enforcement was quite lax. That can easily be remedied overnight almost, and it is being remedied. The issue is more of the some tens of millions of foreign residents, immigrants, refugees who are already inside the United States. And over that, there is considerable political debate on both sides of the spectrum. Even if people might be opposed to immigration, they often are not in favor of removing people who are already inside the United States, because after all, they are often their personal friends, their gardeners, their cleaners, their staff, even their bosses, because some people have been there for many years.
Yes, and since we know this, what happened in the past 48 hours in Minnesota and Portland, both these cities are very multicultural. So in what ways could this public perception of law enforcement be shaped by clashes between federal agents and communities with a history of political dissent in both these cities?
Yeah, I would counsel, if I was advising people on the far left in the United States, the kind of people that led the Black Lives Matter movement, if I were counseling them, I would very much advise them not to make this issue into another Black Lives Matter movement, because the American right, the Trump administration in particular, would absolutely love that. It would lead to their resounding re-election. There are midterm elections coming up in about 10 months. And if there was another BLM movement because of this kind of thing, that would galvanize the right and centrists against them, and that would mean that the Democrat Party would lose in a very big way in 10 months' time.
What do you think? Lastly, what do you think? What can Trump do to kind of gain more support in these cities? Because it seems like right now it's just crippling.
Oh no, I don't think so at all. On the contrary, when you see these protests, that kind of thing, these are very minor. On a national scale, you're talking about a country with 350 million people and a third of global GDP. So the fact that there are a couple of protests in the center of some cities, where in any case most people do not live or work, is not making any difference to America's GDP or tax revenue. It's really just for the TV screens. It would have to grow to vastly higher levels before it made any kind of impact on Trump's thinking. And like I said, Trump would love nothing more than to be able to present himself as the man who was fighting far left Antifa protesters, standing up against them, because they are almost universally unpopular. And with the way the American politics works, the critical thing is to present yourself as a centrist. To win, you have to present yourself as more of a centrist than your opponent. And the Antifa people are very far on the left. And so this would all make it extremely easy for Trump to do exactly that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutka, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we move on to our next news. Now we move the focus on to Israel. The Israeli military and Shin Bet has said that they carried out strikes in northern and southern Gaza in response to a rocket launched from Gaza City that fell short of Israel. In a statement, the IDF has said the strikes targeted Hamas operatives and terror infrastructure, including rocket launch shafts. Israeli officials say the rocket fire was clear, violation of the ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. Gaza Civil Defense Agency has reported that Israeli strikes killed at least 13 people, including 4 children. The latest exchange underscores growing strains on the fragile ceasefire. Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Sol Sadka. He's a political commentator, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Mr. Sadka, for staying with us. What more can you tell us about this escalating tensions between Israel and Hamas and in Gaza?
Look, the ceasefire is a ceasefire in name only. The Hamas operatives that remain in the 40% of Gaza that they still control, most of it rubble, have had already a few months under which they were obligated to return the final body of the final hostage they are holding and completely disarm themselves. And they have done either. And they have no intention of doing either. As a result, Israel is simply entrenching itself in the 60% of Gaza that it controls and delineating what is effectively a border. And there is really no prospect of that changing in the near future. The cleanup of Gaza will never begin until Hamas are no longer there, because there's no international group, body, agency at all who will be willing to, or even allowed to, supply any kind of funds, any kind of cash for the rebuilding of Gaza while Hamas is still there. Because everyone knows that if that happens, they will simply return to building tunnels and rockets and all that stuff. So the ceasefire continues to Israel's benefit. Hamas are virtually disarmed. They are virtually harmless to the Israeli population. And a skeleton force of perhaps 10,000 Israeli soldiers is surrounding them and pinning them down. And Israel is entirely capable of doing that in perpetuity, just by using its standing army based on conscription.
Right. And can we still say, building on your answer, can we still say that the ceasefire is holding and phase 2 should be implemented?
The ceasefire, as far as Israel is concerned, is implemented. They did what they were supposed to do. The ball is now in the court of Hamas to hand over all their weapons and leave. But they're not going to do that. That will never happen. It was always obvious that was never going to happen. So the main goal of the ceasefire was to bring the war to a kind of frozen state and get all the hostages out. And that worked out for Israel very well. It worked out for Hamas's former sponsors in Qatar and Turkey, who recognized that the game was up for them, and it was simply causing them reputational damage. But Hamas is not going to leave. Hamas are crazed jihadis. They want to die rather than surrender. And the people who live under them, some 1.5 to 2 million people at this point, are suffering very greatly. They are being allowed to leave as they get visas through various means. And it's very sad for everyone involved, but there's no prospect, if this continues, of Gaza getting rebuilt in the next decades.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Sol Sadka for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to South America. Venezuela has released 5 Spanish citizens from prison, including prominent rights activist Rocio San Miguel, who had been detained since February of 2024. Spanish authorities have confirmed that Andres Martinez, Jose Maria Basoa, and Ernesto Gorbe and Miguel Moreno were also freed. The Spanish government has called the move a positive step, but local rights groups say the promised release of Venezuelan political prisoners has not yet been carried out. Families waiting outside detention centers report ongoing uncertainty about the actual releases. The prisoner frees come amid political turmoil in Caracas following the ouster of President Nicolas Maduro, the swearing of interim President Delcy Rodriguez, and the U.S. announcement that it would refine and sell millions of barrels of Venezuelan crude oil. Rights group Foro Penal estimates that more than 800 political prisoners remain in Venezuela, including at least 86 foreign nationals. Now we move on to tech news. Italy's Data Protection Authority has issued a warning over artificial intelligence tools, including Elon Musk's chatbot Grok, citing the risk of generating deep fake images without consent. The regulator has said that AI platforms that manipulate real images or voices, including tools that digitally undress people, could lead to serious privacy violations and criminal offences under EU law. Italian officials are working with Ireland's Data Protection Commission, the EU's lead privacy regulator for X, and say further action may follow. The warning comes as European policymakers push for tougher enforcement of data protection and digital services rules. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for